COVID on.
I will record. Are you done sneezing? Because now I'm recording.
Let's do it.
All right. What do you think about this button, though? Should I close it?
Yeah. I mean, you're a married man.
Yeah.
You don't want somebody to log on
So-
and see that luscious V of chest pubes going down to your ball fro.
So I should humiliate my wife. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, basically.
All right.
Well, cheers.
Should we start this thing?
We'll start it. Cheers. Welcome to the
Cheers.
first Bros and Bourbon pod.
Bros and Bourbon, man. It's a podcast where the bros are aged as much as the bourbon.
A lot of gray on the screen.
What are you drinking, Dan Gab, boys?
So this is the wonderful Springbrook Adirondack High Rye Bourbon. Oh, is that Dave Jacobs joining us?
I believe it is the man, the myth, the legend. Let's bring him in here. Dave. Uh-oh.
Oh, what are you doing?
There's a lot happening. Why does Dave keep going away?
Are we both clicking it?
Is that what's happening?
All right. I won't click it. You click it.
All right. Dave.
There he is.
How's it going? I'm in. How's it going?
Ah, he's there. The man, the
going on,
myth,
guys?
the legend, formerly known as Jacoby. It's Dave.
Oh,
How are you?
good. Doing good. What did I walk into here? What were we?
We were talking about bourbon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cheers.
And debating on whether I should do up this button or not, but I did.
No, you did. Okay.
I already did it.
Yeah.
So I guess that's fine.
I thought the chest hair looked good.
I thought so too, but we'll be conservative for this one.
Inaugural Bros and Bourbon podcast. It is our first podcast. We're going to try to set the tone right out of the gate that this is just it's a podcast like rooted in reality, where it's like your local bar. You're going to belly up, have a conversation with normal people who are not whacked out of their minds, who have some relevant experience, a lot of things, thoughts on a lot of things, some of it relevant, some of it real, some of it's total BS. But it'll be fun. It's going to be fun. It's ultimately about having some conversation and having a little bit of fun. So in this first segment, Dave, what we like to do is belly up to the bar.
Yeah.
Get in here, we belly up, and we talk about the topics. And so we start with 80 proof. And coincidentally, it's timely. As we're recording this episode, we just had the 4th of July holiday, right? So did everybody have a nice holiday?
Yeah, it was pleasant. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, that was
Good.
great. I worked. It was the American dream.
That is the American dream. It's good. Nobody else did. So I'm glad you did, because nobody else shows up to work anymore. So here's a question we want to pose right now. What is your favorite holiday, and why is the only correct answer the 4th of July? Right? It's the only correct answer. There is no other holiday as good as the 4th of July. Middle of summer, cookouts, sunshine. You can't beat the 4th of July. America. It's America's freaking birthday. Pyrotechnics, drinking beers, hanging out with your buddies, going fishing, going golfing, good weather everywhere. You can't possibly beat it. 4th of July blows all the other holidays away.
Completely disagree. I don't know how you skip over Halloween like that, but Halloween is the greatest holiday there is. There's no gift giving. It's fall. The air is crisp. It's cool. The leaves are falling. College girls are dressing up in amazing outfits. You're giving out candy. It's Halloween blows 4th of July out of the water.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to throw a flag on that. I don't know if Halloween's a holiday. I don't know if it qualifies.
How does that qualify as a holiday?
It's not. You don't get the day off, right?
Is the
I don't
bank
get the 4th of July off either.
You get your mail. Well, that's true for you, but
For most working class,
holiday.
Is the bank
we're not all
open on
white
the 4th of
collar
July?
like the two of you.
The bank is open on the 4th of July. I mean, on Halloween, right? The bank's
Yeah.
open.
If
Yeah,
it's
for
if
sure.
it's
The mail gets
Monday
delivered.
to Friday. Yeah. So a little, I don't know if this. I would agree with you that Halloween probably does trump the 4th of July if it's an actual holiday, if it qualifies.
This is crazy talk.
So
Thank you.
Halloween is chilly,
It's
cold,
brisk.
can be
even.
Brisk.
It's dark. Okay.
Fantastic.
It is interrupted nonstop by people ringing your doorbell looking for free stuff. right? No barbecue, no beers, no
You can barbecue. You
golf.
can have beers.
Not barbecue.
The
Nobody
movies for
barbecues on
Halloween.
Halloween.
Absolutely, you can. You could have a little fire out back, grill over some open flames, get some nice fall air going, have some brews, put the kids
Apple
to bed.
cider.
Yeah, a little cider, absolutely. Pumpkin beer,
Yeah,
absolutely.
the
Way
pumpkin
better.
beer alone seals it.
What
How
about
many
Cousin
4th of July
Eddie?
movies have you seen?
Cousin Eddie flying a missile right up the tailpipe of the invading alien ship. What about that? That's the ultimate blockbuster. 4th of July, not Halloween.
No, dude, the Jason movies, the Halloween movies, the Saw movies. You go there are Halloween movies galore.
Saw is a Halloween movie?
Absolutely.
Was every scary movie a Halloween movie?
In my book, yeah.
All right, well then every summer movie is a 4th of July movie for that matter then.
Very different. Very different.
Every scary movie is not a Halloween movie.
I disagree, they are.
Oh
my We have haunted houses, you got corn mazes, you got those donuts that they, you can
cider donuts.
Cider donuts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I don't know. It's got a lot going for it. That's all I'm saying.
Fall sucks.
Fall is the best season.
Terrible. 4th of July. Did you see that video on Twitter of the front door security camera, the family where the guy piles like a bajillion fireworks under the family van, right? He's got like a crate of fireworks. Looks like a fireworks factory that you'd see like in some news of an accident overseas. Big piles of fireworks, and then the guy ends up, he lights off a firework. And then all of a sudden, this thing starts shooting, almost hits a kid. You see a lady save a baby. Hold on, I'm going to show. I got a picture. I'm going to
all of these things sound like Halloween components.
No, hold on. Let me get this picture. There's a couple of layers to this. So you got the kid. Here you go. Now you're seeing what's happening. I did a little X's and O's for you.
What are you, John
Here's
Madden?
what's happening. Right, you can see this lady in the red circle is saving a baby. She's literally pulled a baby out of the little baby chair in the middle of the frame. The guy in the blue square is actually insane. He's walking towards.
Is this why women live longer than men?
Well, that may be some of that. He's walking towards the giant pile of fireworks that's about to blow up the family van. That guy's crazy. You can't do anything like that on the 4th of July. You can't blow up your freaking van, but you could do it on the 4th of July because America, baby. America.
Okay. Yeah, strongly disagree.
You can certainly have a bonfire that gets out of hand on Halloween. So, there's...
Yeah, think of all the dried leaves. You know the type of fire you could start with that many dried leaves? You could burn down a whole neighborhood.
I cannot believe that there's any dissension on this topic. I really can't. By the way, the show is on Twitter at Bros and Bourbon Pod. Bros, letter N, Bourbon Pod on Twitter. I'd love to hear from some people out there who think that everybody but me is crazy, because the 4th of July is the penultimate perfect holiday.
I don't want to call you crazy. I think you make a good argument. I mean, 4th of July is a great holiday. It's, boats, fireworks, usually good weather.
Human freedom,
Yeah, swimsuits and all of that. You got a lot going.
Not women's freedom, but 4th of July is maybe the 3rd best holiday behind Halloween and Yom Kippur. Give me Yom Kippur over the 4th of July. Yeah. Forgiveness of sins trumps freedom.
I disagree. Your freedom to have your sins forgiven, your freedom to practice your religion is because of American independence celebrated on the 4th of July.
Which really should be the 2nd anyways. There's been a lot of controversy on the date, so I don't even know. There might be some disqualifiers there. Yeah.
4th of July might be a fraud.
You can't change it now. It'd be way too confusing to change it now. It's just...
I'm not saying change it. I'm just saying
it'd be way too confusing to write history appropriately.
It's like making Jesus not white. It would just be confusing now, even though we all agree that that's wrong.
Well...
Who knows?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
all right.
Have you met him?
I wasn't there.
Have I met Jesus?
Yeah.
No, I've only seen him on Rescue Me, actually.
I came close a couple times, but
I guess Halloween wins. Is that how this works, or
is Dave the referee here? Is that going to be the way we approach this? Is Dave the judge?
I mean, he's the sober one.
Is Dave
right
is Dave the Bros and Bourbon Simon Cowell?
All right, Dave.
Yeah.
So rule, Dave. What say you?
Well, you make a really good argument on the 4th of July, especially the weather, the fireworks. Halloween is an amazing event. I hate to call it a holiday. So just by that, Halloween wins, but just by that, I got to go with the 4th of July because it's an official recognized holiday.
You're crazy. Crazy.
It's a technicality. He wins on a technicality. I hate to have the first one go that way, but that's how it's going.
I never had a doubt.
Yeah, biting his ear in the next round.
Never had a doubt. All right, so
Play dirty.
The next topic is I'm just curious what are non-offensive.
Wait, real quick, Barry. Did Dave get the rundown here?
No, this is all new to Dave.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
So what we want to call your attention to is a little situation that brewed out in Oregon. So in Oregon, they're going to have a community conversation between the regional health equity coalitions and some community advisory councils and other something or other whatevers. So a memo leaked on Twitter that basically said, in being responsive to partners across the state, we're hearing that the timing of this meeting is not ideal and people would like more time to prepare for this important conversation. We recognize that urgency is a white supremacy value that can get in the way of more intentional and thoughtful work, and we want to attend to this dynamic. Therefore, we will reach out at a later date to reschedule. So it happens certainly all the time in the world that meetings get rescheduled because people can't attend and things shift around. It's a crazy world. People get COVID, travel gets delayed. So you just can't always run things on schedule. But the line that stuck out to me was, we recognize that urgency is a white supremacy value. And so I'm sort of curious, because it strikes me that we're reaching the point where maybe any sort of inconvenience, any reason that we need to do pretty much anything can be laid off on some woke cause. Urgency is a white supremacy value. I would like my, airline pilot to show some urgency. I like it when my FedEx guy or the Prime guy shows some urgency, get me my package. I don't think that has anything to do with the white supremacy. I think it's good, and people like it if you show up to work on time, right? People like it if you're in a restaurant and the food is cooked and it urgently comes to your table while it's still hot. Urgency seems like a pretty broad human value, doesn't it?
So here's where I want to poke a couple holes here, a little nitpicky. First, the person who wrote that was, or the ideology that comes from is a white person, right? That's a little white guilt coming out there. But I would argue that Samuel L. Jackson shows the most urgency of any human on the planet. So I would say that if urgency is white supremacy, then Samuel L. Jackson is a white supremacist.
So I can't confirm whether that memo was written by a person of color or a white person. Although I suspect,
I believe if you research it back, the ideology that has now been kind of adapted into some school systems comes from, and I'll see if I can find the article and I'll send the link out on the Bourbon and Bros Twitter. But I believe it comes from a white gentleman. I'm 99% sure I read that.
This concept of urgency being a white supremacy value?
Yeah, it's one of like many I don't know, ideologies is the right phrase, but like many things in society that benefit or lean towards white people.
I don't know how urgency benefits anyone other than benefiting everyone equally. I don't see how urgency discriminates against anyone. It's the first time I'm hearing this, so I'm having a hard time, digesting the concept here. How urgency would be beneficial to a certain race over another. I think it's pretty equal overall.
Here's also where I kind of find the irony in this. So if I jump on this podcast, hypothetically, and I say, wow, African Americans are late for everything, I'm probably canceled tomorrow. But if this person comes out and says urgency is white supremacy, which is basically the same thing, they're applauded and elected to what is it? Was a school committee member? Is that what that was?
No, she's
council.
She's the Regional Health Equity Coalition Program Manager for the Oregon Health Authority Office of Equity and Inclusion.
Yeah.
Wow. Having said that, by the way, our family's totally white and late for everything. So they have fully missed the memo on their supremacy of urgency or whatever.
I don't want to don't confuse punctuality with urgency, because you can be late but always in a state of urgency.
Oh,
that's
right.
Interesting perspective. You are correct
to that.
Right.
Yeah.
So like I can urgently show up to the NBA draft for the first time when my kid gets drafted and I haven't seen him in 18 years, and I can be urgent. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. That would work.
Okay.
But also, urgent is a wonderful, great sax solo in the Foreigner song. So it's pretty good.
Probably top 5 sax solos in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think it's up there, at least in pop music,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I had a sax solo once at we're just jumping right out of that. Oh, okay.
Well, go ahead. We don't have a banner for your sax solo, so you can
finish that thought.
It deserved one, let me tell you.
Go ahead.
No, it's fine. Let's move it along. Let's go to 100 proof. My sax solo is 100 proof.
Hold on. Oh, wait. I mean, I want to know. Now I want to know. Here. There you go. Dan at Bandcamp story. Let's hear it.
It didn't involve a flute. No, it's fine. We'll leave my sax.
You can't start. People are out in the Twitterverse wondering do you play the saxophone? Have you been hiding the saxophone from me all these years?
Oh wait, you saxophone?
Yeah.
I was waiting for sax. Sorry. My bad. Never mind.
Okay. All right. Okay. I guess that's going to end there. All right. So the 100 proof topic is something that I think is important actually to the betterment, the continuation of society as we know it. And it is the question of comedy. How does comedy persist in an age when people are generally oversensitive pricks? Okay. Comedy is a tough business right now. And so a comic named Andrew Schultz had a deal to do a Netflix special. Actually, had a 4-part Netflix special. But Netflix had an issue with part of the bit that he was going to do, and he took to the Instagram and said he's not going to edit his material to cut out jokes because the network is worried about Twitter backlash. I don't know if this will work. I hope like hell it does, but that's up to you all. So basically what he's going to do is self-release the comedy special that Netflix is no longer going to release because they don't like his jokes about abortion. So he and when I first saw the story, I didn't really know who Andrew Schultz was because honestly, comedy's kind of tired right now. So I didn't know who he was, but I watched the bit. It's on YouTube. You can watch the abortion bit on YouTube uncensored, and it's not exactly what you think it is. He puts a little twist on it, but basically what he says is I think people like real authentic comedy, and I think they would prefer that than some watered down corporate boardroom bullshit. And I 100% agree. Even comedians whose political takes don't align with mine should feel free to make jokes, get their knives out, be funny, be cutting, be edgy. Comedy should not be censored because we're worried about social media backlash.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much either one of you watch comedy specials or listen to much comedy. This really wasn't that bad. I don't know if you've heard of Anthony Jeselnik. If you get a chance, check it out. He does a great skit.
That's a real name?
Yeah. He's amazing. He does a skit where he shits all over Great Barrington. So if you get a chance, it's really good.
Anthony Sizzlechest? What's his name?
Jeselnik. It's amazing. Amazing. Okay. He was a writer on the Comedy Central roasts. But anyway, point being, This is Netflix taking a stand over something that most people wouldn't have heard of or cared about. If you like comedy and you like this, you would have watched it, and that would have been the end of it. The people who would have not watched this are the people who would have not liked it. So by their not showing it, they are making it a headline. They're making it news. They're taking their stand. Um, this would not have been an issue. You know, if you watch any of the older Louis C.K. stuff, Anthony Jeselnik, even some of the Tom Segura stuff or Big J. Okerson, like it gets way wilder than some of the stuff Andrew Schultz said. So, and they're on YouTube. You know, Big J. Okerson does a skit on it's One Night Only, was a Comedy Central thing. You know, he talks about like banging this chick from a radio station with all his buddies, like way wilder than you know the jokes that Andrew Schultz made about
what radio
abortion.
station that was.
It's really, if you get a Big J. Okerson, check that out too.
It wasn't WTKK. I'll tell you that.
No, there's nothing happening there.
I agree with you, and I think that's the point. The issue here for Netflix isn't that this stuff was too raunchy or too over the top or too disgusting. It's that Andrew Schultz didn't get on stage and say abortion should be funded by the government up until and after the birth of the baby, no matter what, unlimited abortion all the time, and Clarence Thomas should die. If he said that, Netflix would put it on the front page because that's the in vogue take.
He did say, granted with a hook at the end, but he did say, I'm all for women's choice. Women have the right to make a decision. Women can have abortions if they want to. I'm all for it. He added the hook at the end of like, you know, when we get to heaven, I can say to God, you know, I didn't kill any babies. She did. Then there was also the part where he talked about, you know, late-term abortion. And, you know, the joke he made there was if they can spell abortion, then you can't abort them. You know, you get like 3 years. So I don't think he was even, you know, it wasn't even like he was super conservative saying, you know, some really aggressive stuff. It was funny, man. And it's a touchy subject, and I get that, but like, you know, we got to be able to joke about these things.
I agree. Got to be able to joke. David?
Yeah, well, I would say that, you know, if you look at any civilized society in history, they always had a very strong, humor. Part of their society was open to jokes and humor. Even the kings had their jesters and all of that. But certainly a free society, comedy is a huge component, in my opinion. I think the ability to poke fun at yourselves and ourselves is critical. And so I'm glad he's taking a stand, but I also wonder, you know, how many of these, you know, stories are kind of, I don't know, over exaggerated. Maybe Netflix just didn't like the whole thing, and he's picking this one segment to kind of blow it up and point it to that. I don't know. I haven't seen the whole thing, but
that's a good point.
I'm a little sensitive to it. Could be a controversy on the other end, kind of made up.
As I understand, Netflix hasn't commented on it. So to be fair, you're right. There could be some other position that we don't know. But comedy,
yeah,
should be fun.
I would also add Netflix is taking if this is a stance they're taking. Media has changed, right? With TikTok, YouTube, what we're doing now in podcasting, media has changed, and we've seen kind of cable TV and terrestrial radio struggle. Logically, we're going to start to see, you know, the Netflix, the Hulus start to see that same regression as content is put on YouTube, as content is put on TikTok, as content is developed in different places. So I think it's an interesting move by Andrew to kind of take this and say, fine, you don't want it. I'm going to go do it on my own, do it better, do it the way I want to do it. It'll be genuine. And people who want to see it and care about it will get it. And they're kind of just, you know, the same thing that all these TV shows did to, you know, regular TV 20 years ago when they said, fine, you don't want to buy my TV show? I'm going to sell it to Netflix. I'm going to put it on Netflix. I'm going to do 6 seasons. I think we could see similar things happening now in the creative world with the different mediums that have been developed.
Well, there you go. All right. That's the belly up segment. So 3 topics that we think matter, 3 topics that we would love to hear from you about, and 3 topics that you can talk to us about on Twitter at Bros N Bourbon, Bros, the letter N Bourbon Pod on Twitter. Hey, don't forget, at Mohawk Honda, the team can find what you're looking for by searching the lot or the entire Eastern Seaboard, and they'll do it just for you. The real opportunity for you right now is either trading in or selling your vehicle, and Mohawk Honda buys cars. In some cases, you might be able to sell it for more than you paid for it. The supply chain is still facing challenges, as if you didn't know, which creates selling as an opportunity for you. And as always, the team at Mohawk Honda will make the buying and selling experience very easy. You know them as Cars with Ken, Trust Trav, Trust Trav Landry, Luis, the VIP man Morales, C-Mac, Let's Do a Deal McKenna, Drive with Deanna, Coles, or you can just talk to the leader, the man in charge, General Manager Greg Johnson, because at Mohawk Honda on Freeman's Bridge Road in Scotia, they want to buy your car and they always go out of their way to please you. Mohawk Honda, Freeman's Bridge Road in Scotia.
Dave, was that better than TKK? I think that was actually the best read I've heard him do. That was good.
That was pretty clean. Yeah, we had to edit a lot back then.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the names. I got to get used to the names, but they sound like. I mean, that's at Mohawk Honda. That's what Levac. They do him right over there. Every time I feel like he's had a new car. He's had more new cars than I've had new shirts in the last couple of years.
Yeah, he joined the Mohawk Chevy family now. He's got a sweet Silverado.
Oh, really?
So he's Gaz has got a new Pilot from Mohawk Honda. Levac's driving a new Silverado from Mohawk Chevy. So all I'm saying here, Barry, is if we can do this podcast right, we can upgrade some vehicles.
Well, that'd be good. I mean, nobody's opposed to that. All right, so here's where the show goes a little bit off the rails. So we're running a little bit behind. We don't have Cameron Robbins. Haven't heard from him for a little segment that the four of us were going to do, and we do have a special guest who's going to join us that I think is going to be awesome, and I think he's going to jump on the line with us here any second. So we're gonna kind of shuffle the deck and go ahead and get ready for our guest. And I think I think what we want to do through the course of this podcast is not only to sort of give our opinions and have a medium for us to vent and be creative and whatever, but also to get interesting people into some conversations where you could have the type of thing that you'd have sitting around a corner at the local bar. It's not under TV lights and it's not pre-scripted, and you can have some depth of conversation. So I'm pretty excited that Justin Hart, who I discovered right at the beginning of the COVID pandemic and mitigation.
Listen
insanity.
to you, I discovered.
Well, I discovered him for me. I didn't discover him for the world. I discovered him for myself.
He's okay. All right.
Believe me, he didn't need my help being discovered at all. He's got a whole Substack and Twitter world, and he is like the leader of the Rational Ground movement. So he doesn't need me, but I needed him. I mean, because there was a point, if you go back to the beginning of the COVID situation, when it started to become clear that this was not going to be 15 days to slow the spread. It's not going to be, we're not going to just hit pause and all come back, until we started to become a point where, man, it started to be obvious that this was getting out of control. And I remember for the first time in my life, there were a couple nights that I didn't sleep. I was sitting in my home office. I didn't know where my next dollar was going to come from. It was the craziest period that I had ever personally gone through. And people like our guest who's just joined us here, Justin Hart, we formed a community. There's a community of this Rational Ground movement that started very early on because people realized that this was not making sense. What's going on is not right. It's not okay. We're not going to just hit pause for our kids or our businesses or our communities and just pick everything back up where we left off like it's nothing. And there were times certainly that I wondered, am I the only person who's thinking this, or is it just a few people? Is the whole world gone nuts? And Justin Hart was one of the people who emphatically said to me and to the rest of the world, you're not crazy. They're crazy. There is rational ground. There is a path forward. There's a better way that we could be doing this. And so Justin was instrumental, I think, in building that community. You can find him on Twitter at Justin_Hart. An awesome follow for all things COVID common sense and a lot of other stuff. He's a data guy, super smart, super funny, and he's got a beautiful family as well. So Justin, thanks for jumping on with us on the podcast here.
Oh, Barry, great to be with you. You guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we got
You
you.
sound great.
I didn't know if it was going to be video or not, so I didn't come prepared. But I'm glad I didn't come overdressed there, guys. That's great.
No, this is so
Very
Justin, the
casual.
setup on this is we're trying to sort of create local bar conversation. It's not under TV lights. It's not. We don't wear makeup. It's not perfect. It's just real
Speak for
people.
yourself.
You're not
Yeah,
wearing
well,
makeup?
I need
Yeah,
a powder.
yeah.
imagine if I
I
wasn't.
used to be in musical theater, so I did some of that back days. But yeah, no, that's terrific. I love this forum, and Barry, you and I connected on early on. But I think your experience is not totally unusual for any of this too. I think a lot of us had those moments. I remember my own came because I was one of the first really outspoken guys in February and March of 2020. I wrote some of my first articles on Medium about how I thought the data was wrong. I thought they were getting this all wrong. I thought the shutdowns were ridiculous. And I remember tweeting out, it was March 29th, that fateful day in the Rose Garden when President Trump got up there with Pence and with Birx and with Fauci. And they said they were extending the 2-week lockdown to 40 days. And I tweeted out, well, two things just happened. Our lockdown just got extended and Trump just lost the election. Now, I was a big supporter and actually predicted the election of President Trump back in 2016, much to a lot of people's chagrin. But I was really sad to see that he took that decision just because I know demographics and I knew being in politics that even if 1 or 2% of the riskiest profiles for COVID stayed home, he'd lose the election. Now, there's obviously a lot of questions about the election itself, but he didn't do himself any favors. It handicapped us because it set loose, basically Pandora's box. After those 40 days were up, he tried to rein back in the horse and everything else there, but nothing to it. It went down to the state level, went down to 3,200 counties. You had 3,200 unelected health officials who are making determinations on your kids' education, your life, your business, and what a crazy wreck. But yeah, I had those moments too. I remember it was in March, and I just thought to myself, maybe it was early April. I just said, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I am underplaying this thing. What if I am wrong? What if I'm really, this is really the apocalypse that people make it out to be? And that morning, I remember John Ioannidis, who is the most cited living scientist today out of Stanford. He wrote this article talking about how this could be not a once-in-a-life pandemic. It could be a once-in-a-lifetime data fiasco. And we learned very quickly the shards of the world are all around us, and we're having to pick up the pieces for this. And I think one of the things I learned very quickly, this has changed the entire trajectory of my life. And when you stick your neck out for things that you know are right, you're going to be rewarded, if not immediately, then down the road, because you will have been on the right side of history. And I think there are a lot of Americans who, understandably, my kindest interpretation was they just didn't want to get in the fight, right? And who can blame them? I had my own days, where I'd purposely not. I'm here in San Diego, by the way, in the worst of the worst areas, and so there are times when I would purposely, not wear my mask inside of a store and get the side eyes and everything else there. But there were times when I was too tired. I just said, I can't deal with the fight. I'll put my mask on, right? So I think we've all had those moments where it's been like a whirlwind of, wow, am I really doing the right thing? I'm really kind of sticking my neck out here. I've lost family, friends, and business over this thing. What's next? But in the end, it'll be proved right.
Well, I know you and I had a chance back more than a year ago now.
Yeah, last April,
Diego,
maybe. Yeah,
right. And we caught up, and we actually had to go. We had to go to what at the time we were calling a renegade restaurant.
Oh, that's
nobody,
right. I remember that.
Like,
yeah,
it was literally against the law for somebody to serve us a cup of coffee. But we found a place where where they were obliging to do some business, probably trying to survive, frankly. And we got to catch up for a cup of coffee. And I know we've had a similar experience. And the thing about this that I find the most interesting, and I think that you and Jay and some of the other folks do a great job of making this. It's not all about policy. It's not all about data, because I think we're I know that we're right on the data, and I know that we're right on the policy, but the story I think that we need to tell is the human story, because it's about 18-year-old kids who lost the last two most formative years of their educational experience. It's about people who were denied the opportunity to be with their dying loved ones. It's about
Yeah.
people who lost businesses. And so, you must hear story after story. How much does that, I mean, how much does that affect you?
Yeah, it impacts me greatly. We have we started when I started this. I have a background in tech, internet strategies, sales, marketing. I do a lot of different things. And my first clients at the start of the pandemic, I had I had just come out of the leisure space, so I got a lot of leisure clients that I was consulting for and doing dashboards and analysis and data. And one of them was high end golf excursions for baby boomers, dead, right? Then another one was one on one consulting for wealthier families sending their kids to college, dead. And my third one was a luxury exclusive vacation club for families, dead, 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 right? So I got a lot of time on my hands. What I'm going to do, threw myself and my skill set at this, and then quickly realized there were a lot of people who were hungry for this information. But yeah, when we got through the first months, it was, at first it was it was a little exciting, right? We were all in this really interesting national international journey where the country shut down. I remember my wife and I then we had been doing a YouTube channel for our family, and we filmed ourselves going through the cascading snaking line of Costco to get that one big ream of toilet paper before it was gone, right? But then when it got through to April and March, I remember the first impact I heard was a guy who worked for me. He was one of my sales guys when I was a chief marketing officer and sales officer of a large tech company. I knew the guy well. He was a little eccentric, maybe a little bit offbeat. Found out he committed suicide, and I got his family. I said, "What happened?" He said, "Just the lockdown, the shutdowns, kind of did him in." And then the next thing you know, my valedictorian in my high school, good friend, really very well known sports broadcaster out of Detroit, and he died of colon cancer. Now I don't know if that was exacerbated and he was my age, just barely 49, 50. And so I don't know if that was exacerbated by that. But then I got messages from people, and I think the first people to raise the alarms were oncologists, cancer doctors who said, okay. Either COVID has cured cancer or something is really amiss. Because during that spring, that April and May, and even into June, 50% fewer cancer diagnoses. In some cancer instances, 78% fewer cancers that were diagnosed than the year previous. And it wasn't because they cured cancer, because people were too scared to go to the hospital. Summer that year, I got a text message from a friend up in Orange County, north of me. And he said, Justin, our family is devastated. As you may have heard, my mother and father have both passed away in the last 4 months, and neither from COVID. One of them died from a blood glioblastoma, and the other one from an undiagnosed kidney disease. They were too scared to leave home and even go to the hospital. And what we point out, I have one guy on my team, our ragtag bunch of Battlestar Galactica analysts and activists, and he basically just spends his days on Twitter following these doctors who are saying, "Oh my goodness, this is so hard right now. We are so overwhelmed. It's just like it was in the winter of last year, in the summer of and then he'll point out the data and he'll say, do you know your hospital is down 50% from its capacity ER wise than it was a year ago or 2 years ago? And when you get into the numbers, you realize it's not there. And that's really the unfortunate thing, is that the data didn't meet the moment, and the risk profile, it's extraordinary what we went through.
Hey, Justin, Dan Gadbois here, Barry's
Hi, Dan.
brother. Nice to meet you. So as a data guy, my question to you would be, how accurate do you believe much, if any, of the data was early in 2020 through the summer of 2020? I mean, what you were seeing, do you think it was an accurate reflection of what was happening in hospitals and around the globe?
Yeah, one of my first articles is the coronavirus dashboards will kill us all long before the virus ever will. And I meant it is that when it came to, you have so many issues. First of all, the CDC itself, when it comes to these things, will always say, it says right there in the fine print of everything they have, they say, well, you really shouldn't trust our data except for 1 or 2 years out, right? And my kindest interpretation, again, is that we all of a sudden turned around and said, hey, we want you guys to act like overnight vote counts. And so we shouldn't be surprised when we ended up with, a bunch of hanging chads and a big bag of ballots from Broward County type of thing in the results of all our COVID stuff. Is just they just weren't set up for it. And in general, there were a lot of problems because we were making policy on the reported numbers. Okay. But the reported numbers are way off because what we call with this data lag. And it's an interesting thing. It's the one downside of having a fairly robust healthcare system by standards of service to other countries. Or I should say, it's the one downside of not having a universal healthcare system is that our data is all over the place, right? So we have municipal hospitals, we have private hospitals, we have religious hospitals, we have city hospitals, we have county hospitals, we have state hospitals, and each one of them has their own policies, and each one of them coordinates with the county in a specific way, and the state has its own policy. So the data has to make it from the hospital to the coroner, back to the hospital, up to the county, up to the state, and then to the dashboards, right? And by the time that happens, it's lagged significantly. I always compared it to like if I walked into my kid's room and I found like a big bag of Starbursts, and it, it's like a bag of 500 Starbursts, and they're all empty. And I'm going, I'm taking this kid to the ER, right? But no, he's a dutiful kid, and he's put together, he's put little marks on it. This one is June 5th. This one is June 7th. I consumed it. Let's say you had little packages as to which days, right? And so we were reacting like walking into a room going, oh my gosh, he ate all the Starburst. This is just panic, panic, panic. When in actuality, those 500 Starbursts have been consumed over the past like 2 months. We're still in every CDC update. We get updates of deaths going back to the spring of 2020, right? And things being taken away. And so it's really hard to trust those numbers. And unfortunately, we made terrible policy decisions based on numbers at that moment.
Yeah, I mean, we still had a lot of deaths, though, right? Like, so there was definitely, and I'm not saying, we'll get to the policy debate in a second, but we're still looking at 15 million deaths essentially worldwide.
Yeah, the challenge is that what they had done is they'd made the parameters of these things so wide that they would pick up a death at the latest. So even Dr. Walensky had to admit when they got red-faced because of the Omicron virus, and the Omicron was just slipping past the variants, or was slipping past the vaccine, right? So they had to admit, they said, well, look, the PCR test, the famous test we all use, can pick up a virus at 5 days or 75 days. And in many states, if you were a death within 90 days of testing positive from whatever reason, then you were counted as a COVID death. Now, my team was one of the few teams that actually had a chance. And as far as I know, very, very few people have actually done this. Not on the reporting side. We were just reporters, right? And my guys got a chance in the summer of 2020 to look at 800 redacted death certificates, actual death certificates in Florida. And we got these and we looked at them, and there's in each death certificate, you have a part one, which is the major factors. And then you have part two, which is contributing factors. Now, a lot of these things, about 30% of them were kind of filled out really lazily. And then there's a whole bunch of other ones where you're like, okay, 85-year-old woman, fall from height, femur, COVID death, right? And so we determined that that was not the case. One of the few sort of localized health data systems we have, the VA, right? Because all their data is in one place. David Zweig of The Atlantic published a lengthy article talking about how the latest studies show that maybe half of all the deaths that were attributed probably are not COVID deaths, at least. So we think the numbers are completely skewed off. And when you look at it, if we were to compare, for example, the data on how they did influenza over the years, right? They get the way they look at it is they have these four big buckets. They have how many people were infected, right? Then how many people were hospitalized, or how many people had to see the doctor and get tested, how many people were hospitalized, and how many people died, right? And that's where you get that famous 0.14 percentage deaths, right? Which is to say, in 2017-18, which was a high flu season, you had 44 million infections is what they estimated, and you had about 61,000 deaths, and that turns out to be about 0.14 or so. And so in the case of COVID, if we were to do the same determination, like if you go through and they have this massive file, and very few people could parse it because it's like 12 gigabytes large now, but it basically has a case on every single line. And it's, you'll never be able to open this thing in Excel. You got these high-end database things. And so when it comes down to it, it has a log, and it says, well, do we have like a actual positive specimen date? Do we have an actual hospitalization? do we have a confirmed death? And you realize so much of this is just like people throwing money at them right now. I don't want to infer something like something nefarious here. Like in many cases, like we said, the death certificates were filled out by the hospital otherwise, and sometimes erroneously, sometimes really lazily. But if you're a hospital administrator, and again, I always like to do this, my kindest interpretation, and they just shut down the most profitable parts of your business, the elective surgeries, right? You should, like one hospital consultant told me, you show me a hospital that's under 75% capacity, and I'll show you a hospital that's going out of business. These things are designed to operate. ICUs are designed to operate at 90% plus every single day. And so everyone's panicking at these 90% numbers, but that's what they do, right? And so when all of a sudden you take away the most profitable parts of their business, an administrator is sitting there going, okay, so how can I get just a little more COVID money from here, right? And that it's like, if you're an administrator worth your salt, you got to do everything you can to get reimbursed on the money that you think you're owed, whether the guy was in there for a broken femur or not. Here in San Diego, we have an even larger problem in that the way that they tested for hospitalizations. When you walk to the hospital, I actually had nurses who would send me surreptitiously these documentations, right? And it would say, okay, well, if you are vaccinated, you don't have to test for COVID. But if you're not vaccinated, you have to test for COVID. So if some guy goes in there with an ingrown toenail into the hospital as an ER case and he's vaccinated, they don't test him for COVID. Same guy goes in. If he's not vaccinated, if he happens to test for COVID, it's a COVID hospitalization. They get $10,000 right there. That's the short of it. So maybe a long answer.
Yeah, I always, I think the easy thing, and it's the conversations change, because you're right. Back in mid 2020, I have people, friends and colleagues that I don't talk to anymore because they classified me as a nut. But the conversations changed over time, and I think it was easy at one point to just say, "Oh, you're COVID denier, and you're in this death cult or whatever all that stuff." The reality is that we've never said that COVID doesn't exist, or that there's not a human toll, because there is.
Sure.
I think that the important conversation, I think more and more, especially now years into this for kids, I think people are more in tune to have the conversation about what price we paid, right? We paid a very high price for mitigation, and I think the data will tell you that we got a very low return, right?
Yeah, and look, I want to, on the flip side of the coin, right? I want to take it back just an ounce there and just give some credence there, which is say, yes, a lot of people did die from COVID-19. What we will say is that there's a couple ways that we look at the impact on lives, right, and the impact of a pandemic. In pandemic terms, this was a moderate pandemic. Okay, the average age of death during the 1918 Spanish flu was 29 years old. The average age of death for COVID is 80 years old. There's two ways to look at it. One is to say, well, were these deaths that were going to happen anyways, or what we call it excess deaths? What percentage of excess deaths did we see? Now, in the United States in 2020, we saw about 13% excess deaths. To translate that, it's like the risk of living 6 or 7 more weeks in the year 2020. Okay, and so the idea is like we saw that many more deaths happen in the course of that year. Surprisingly, with all of the vaccines, which is a whole nother question, in 2021 we've seen 18% excess deaths. So it actually increased. So what you do is you take the last 5 years of deaths. We see about, just on, in context, 8,000 people die every day. 40,000 people die in nursing homes every month. And over the course of a year, you have about, 2.8 to 3 million deaths. And so what we saw is a slight uptick on those things by about 13% in 2020 and 18%. But the other factor we look at is what they call YLL, years of life lost. Because this is an important factor, which is to say, when someone who's in the prime of their life in college dies, that impacts society, that impacts that family, that impacts just the entire world around them in a much more significant way than someone who is like late 80s, 90s, right? And what we do is we take the average. We say, well, the average person dies at about 80, 82 years old. I think actually it's gone down. It's like 78 years old now. And so we say from all the people, so if you die at the age of 75 from COVID, then that's 5 years lost. Whereas if you died, in 1918 pandemic at 20 years old, well, let's say there's a 20-year-old here in 2020 that died. That's 60 years lost, right? That's a huge impact. And so when you actually add in those totals and compare it to other pandemics, it's a moderate pandemic at that level, which is unfortunate because we overreacted so badly that now when there might be an actual pandemic, I don't know exactly what my reaction. If we have a pandemic that's killing lots of kids and 20-year-olds, I don't know what I will do then, right? It's a very interesting scenario, and it's a very difficult one to answer.
So to play a little Monday morning quarterback,
yeah,
we obviously, I think we can all agree, at least the four of us here, that there were some policy issues when this thing rolled out in March of 2020. But given what we knew at the time, it's tough in the moment to make that decision. So to go back from this moment, should they have locked down at all? Do you think there should have been a 2-week lockdown, no lockdown? What, with the data you have, what policies would you have made, if you could go back?
Yeah, I would say we knew early on, even at the end of, in the middle of March, based on a few scenarios, what we were hearing from Italy, what we had from the cruise ship, that the impact of the risk assessment for someone, over 65 was far greater than that under 65. In fact, the first paper that John came out with, Professor Ioannidis, was in April, and he said, based on all the data that we have, your risk, if you're under the age of 65, is the same risk you face of dying of COVID as you do driving on a commute to work over 6 months. And he says, if you're over the age of 65, it's slightly higher. It's the risk of dying if you're a professional truck driver, just taking all things into account. And we knew from this very isolated, sort of interesting specimen that came in the cruise ship, I think it was from Italy, if I remember correctly. I can't remember, but it came back. And the percentage of deaths lined up with a very age specific gradient on that, and the problem was the playbook of shutdowns was never in the book. This was something we were improvising. We had like some 2009 pandemic planning. We have a few other things, but basically they saw what happened in China and they freaked out. And a lot of that was propaganda. I mean, they showed film of people passing out on the street. We now know that some of that was fake. We saw people that were literally being welded inside their apartment. And believe you not, I know Dr. Fauci. I know a lot of these reporters would be the first in line to weld you inside your house because they can still do their jobs. But, for some reason, we bought into the panic. And instead of understanding that, hey, there's different risks for different people here, for some reason, the mindset that we have currently in society won't allow us to treat people in different risk categories. And so we had to treat everybody the same, which led to a one-size-fits-all pandemic solution. And so it was a disaster from the get-go. It is Monday, Mark. I think we were all agreed, like, hey, maybe we do need 2 weeks to sort of just assess this thing. But once you unleash that Pandora's box, it was so hard to put it back in. Once that really awful, rusty, never before used tool was sort of taken out, it got a little crazy.
Well,
sorry, Greg, let me jump in real quick.
Go ahead.
Piggyback off that. Do you think there was a bigger or better opportunity to regionally shut this down, like eliminate international travel, eliminate interstate travel to kind of snuff it out, or do you feel that would have not contributed?
There was really interesting. There was this, my volume just went down here. There was this one really interesting professor, Professor Newt Witkowski. Okay. I forget where he's from, but he was largely lambasted. A lot of people hated him for this, but he says, I don't know what we're talking about here. I think he's sort of Germanic, or maybe he's Scandinavian. He says, we shouldn't be doing this. What we should be doing is letting all the kids out to get infected, the people who are not infected by this. And then this thing will be over in like 12 weeks, right? And we've seen that again and again, where it just kind of burns through, those populations that are not terribly at risk. But I think the challenge was there wasn't a lot of confidence when you hold the risk of mortality in front of a politician. They will always do the thing that will lead to in their minds, to the least amount of deaths, but ironically may have led to more. That's the sad case there. But again, these are things that we're testing out. I mean, you look at, for example, if you compare Sweden right now to its neighbors and everything else there, it had 0 excess deaths over the course, percentage-wise, over the course of the 2 years. And they had a lot of challenges, but so did everyone have challenges around this thing. And what's funny is, like, this has happened again and again. We've got the 1918 pandemic, and believe it or not, basically the big challenge and the big mistake happened probably going into the fall of 2020, and then of course into the winter of 2021, where we had these crazy people thinking that they could get to zero COVID, right? Because this is a coronavirus. It's a slippery type of bugger, and overall, we've never been able to stop a respiratory viral pathogen. Especially what has, when we look at something like measles or polio, those have no animal reservoirs. There's no set of deer that has polio. There's no set of beaver that has measles or everything else there. They did a sample of deer across Kansas. 60% of deer have COVID. So unless you're willing to vaccinate all the deer, you're going to have this forever, right? And so they got this mind that we can get down to zero COVID, go to zero COVID. We still have traces of the 1889 Russian flu, the 1989 Spanish flu, the 1958, the 1978, the 2009. We have the H1N1. All these things are in the panoply of different viruses that we just now go as this is A and B and C and everything else there. So if we could have, I don't know what it would have been like, but that one particular scenario would be protect those who are most vulnerable, which is basically by age primarily, and then let everyone else kind of go out and get it and get through it. And then, and don't, like what happened in 2009, the Obama administration, and it's right there, and you can look it up, you can Google this on CBS. The Obama administration just said, we're not going to be testing for this anymore. And that was the big thing. Well, just to give you a comparison, for influenza, over the year, we test and we do an actual lab test of influenza, maybe 1 million, maybe 2 million times. It's basically inferred a lot if you have influenza. We would do that in the matter of 2 hours at the height of the pandemic. We were doing so much ridiculous testing, and these PCR tests, again, they're so sensitive, right? And what's funny is you look at like people that were really smart, like the NFL, and people that were really dumb, like the NBA, and the NFL got it really quick. Because what happens on these PCR tests is they have these things called cycle thresholds, okay? And the way it works is you take a little swab of your nose, and it takes that specimen, right, and it puts it into the little tube. And then this PCR testing, which is really brilliant. I mean, it's put together by this brilliant guy who died in the late 90s. Actually, he died like just 2 years ago. But it basically is for mass testing of different things, but not for what it takes the DNA, and then it replicates it several thousand times over, so that if the cycle threshold is set too high, it'll find a virus in a drop of tomato juice. Whereas what you want to see is like, okay, well, the live virus, because what they would do is they would do samples and would say, okay, well, this guy tested positive at 25 cycles, at 30 cycles. Let's take his specimen now, put it in a lab dish, and see if it grows something for COVID, right? And that's the way you truly test this thing. And what they found is that anything above 35, anything above 33 was not a live virus at all. And we knew this in the fall of 2020 when the New York Times ran a piece and said, did you test positive for COVID? Maybe it's not actually positive. And what we found is that by their estimation, 90% of all the positive tests that came back should never have tested positive because they weren't live virus. They were just finding remnants.
I think it's some of that strikes at the heart of the issue going forward, because to me, the interesting part of this, and on a personal level, I think back to I had another baby in the course of the pandemic, right? And they're you go to the doctor, and there's dads sitting in their cars, right? Because mom can go in and dad can't, right? Or kids that are playing sports, or they can't have spectators. They got to play, have aerobic activities wearing a mask. All these types of things that people started to experience en masse, right? I think there was like a great awakening that happened where people were like, wait, this has gotten out of control. Now I had a baby, and I'm in the hospital, my wife's in the hospital, but all of a sudden, the other kids can't visit the hospital because that's a COVID risk, right? I mean, so
Right.
the things that the things that monumentally change people's lives, life and death stuff, I think is the real story to some extent, and it will inform, to your point, the next time that something happens. There's a long list of people who are on that expert roster that people like me are not interested in hearing from.
Yeah.
We're, you cannot sound that alarm bell again because of the damage that was done for so little return. And it's those are the stories that I think need to be told. I think a lot of people who are in the sort of white collar, work from Maui, DoorDash, who bank those government checks to pay off some debt class, life was pretty good. It's not that bad. This is the least we can do, right? I mean, is to work remotely and make somebody else bring us our food, and we're heroes for doing it. But on the other side of that, there's a massive human, emotional, and social toll, and that I think is the story that really I hope gets told.
And I think we're seeing, the cost of that now. I mean, when you look at, for example, inflation is something about 35%. And when you realize that the government printed, because of COVID, 40% of all the money that's ever existed in the world, and then they hiked the percentage points up about 5%. Well, there you go, right there. 40 minus 5 is 35%. And so the real damage is done is like, well, we could just, print money to keep people afloat. But how depressing was it to, like, look out your window and see your plow in the field and know that, hey, you can't touch that thing. And then I think the rest of us, I think a lot of people, when they saw it in action, go, this is just, it's not even like insulting, it's stupid, right? Like, I remember, I mean, my two daughters, I have a long range of kids. I have two stepdaughters, one who went through the pandemic and graduated. The other one is now 14. So they were both kind of in middle school, high school. And, but they were at a private school, and that first year, everyone shut down the spring. But then in the fall of 2020, 21, this school in San Diego was one of the few that was open. Yeah, they had to wear masks all the time. It was a pain in the butt. But then the 21, 22 school year came, and they folded like a cheap table. The county threatened them, and they just folded. And it was stupid stuff like the lunch lady would come up and say, hey, you can't sit facing your friends. You have to sit perpendicular to the lunch bench, right? Because I guess COVID only goes in one direction. And this is a classical Christian school built on reason and logic and rhetoric. And it's just stupid. Like the director would send us an email saying, well, we were up to 2 a.m. last night trying to contact trace and see who else might have been exposed. It's like, you're all exposed. It doesn't matter. Like, the entire thing of masks is such a charade from top to bottom, right? Because the entire thing was built on the premise that asymptomatic spread was a thing. And we now know it doesn't account for maybe less than 1% of all infections are asymptomatic. So that was the undergirding thing, which is, well, if you're asymptomatic, you don't know it, but you might be spreading it. Not a thing. And then on top of that, it's okay. Well, now you're going to have to wear masks because that's going to help stop the spittle. Well, we know that it's not transferred over spittle. It's aerosolized. So no matter what mask you wear, if you're wearing a surgical mask, if you're wearing, a cloth mask, it's not going to stop an aerosolized viral respiratory pathogen. It's just not. The microns are just too small. It's just never going to do it, right? And now everyone admits that, right? So for all the 2 years, we were wearing cloth masks and surgical masks, and now every single one, from the stringiest lockdown analyst on CNN to Dr. Atlas, they all say that those masks never worked, wouldn't work, don't work. Even early on, the first studies that we had were these two NIH doctors who came out and said, well, our studies, even in the medical field, show that they don't stop infections even within a hospital. And they literally use this term, but we think they kind of act as talisman, reminding people of all the things we do, right? And so here's this incredible, and think about all the fights you had over masks and all the just silliness on planes. And I remember my wife, they here in California, they literally padlocked my kid's swing set at her favorite park and then put like yellow tape around it like it was anathema, right? But and we knew this all along. I just watched it the other day because I got to do this for this book. I have this book coming out in September, and I had to go find a source, and it was the science and technology arm. It's called the Science and Technology Directorate of the Homeland Security, and these guys are sharp. And they got some of the first remnants of the SARS-CoV, the actual particle, and they said, this thing hits the sun, it's gone. This thing hits a surface, it's gone. And like that just got just black hole. No one even thought about that again. Instead, they said put on a mask. But Dr. Fauci in the FOIA emails we comes out, he says, no, these masks, especially the ones you get at the store, those aren't going to do you any good. And then, my team, one of the few teams, again, I don't know why no one else is doing this. One of our favorite things that we did is we got together a bunch of moms who were actually, concerned about their kids' health with masks. And so we helped them find a lab in Florida. And then we took a sample of 12 kids. We took samples of their T-shirt just so we could say here was next to their skin and here's what was on their mask, right? And we went back and said, hey, these kids wore them for like 24 hours. That was it, And boy, I never washed my mask. I wore those forever, right? Because it was cheesecloth and I could breathe right through it. I didn't care. It literally was cheesecloth. It was awesome. But we found on the mask, the lab came back, pneumonia, tuberculosis, meningitis, keratitis, Acinetobacter baumannum, which is basically pneumonia, bloodstream infections, food poisoning, Lyme disease, diphtheria, cow herpes. We found cow herpes on these kids' masks. And anyone who's looked into their kids' masks over a period of month, this is gross. It's stupid, and yet we went on with it, and we
disgusting.
Didn't. Yeah, but no one. I mean, like I can't blame anyone. I tried to dutifully keep my mask off as long as I could at times, right? But there were times, like I said, I got tired, and I just said I got to put the mask on. I can't deal with the fight today.
So tell me about a little bit of time we have left. Tell me about COVIDstoriesarchive.org because you turned me on to that, and I think it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I got this couple. She's got a doctorate in history. She's really well known in certain industries. He's a lawyer, and this is the Walds. And they came to me and said, "Hey, can you help us put together a website where we could capture the stories of the pandemic?" So we put together this website called COVIDstoriesarchive.org, where you can go up there, and if it's fresh in your mind, submit your story. We're hoping this will be picked up by some sort of institution where we can gather stories, both audio, visual, and everything else, and really try to capture what people experienced during the pandemic before it sort of lost our brains there. The two other things we have going, I have my book coming out from Regnery Publishing called Gone Viral, How COVID Broke the World. So that comes out in September. And I'll tell you, that's beyond all the pandemic stuff, that's the hardest thing I've ever done. I had talked so much and written so much about it. I thought it would be a piece of cake, but writing a book is tough, Barry. And I think you're doing a lot of that, aren't you? Now I can't remember, but a lot of speaking engagements and writing. But
yeah, I've taken. Well, you know what? I did 2 fiction books, and I started on a nonfiction project. It's hard. Nonfiction is hard. I mean, some people have a hard time reading it, right? It's really, really hard to write.
Well, and then I had these terrible habits, and my editor's coming back to me every single day because we got to get it in by the publisher this week. And where'd you get this? I don't know. I can go find it. Did I say that? Okay. But the other big project I'm super excited about, we just launched it last week, is called Posterity Pack. Barry, I have a background in politics. Before I was into sort of the private sector, I was on the Mitt Romney campaign. I have a expertise in sort of digital fundraising. I had my own consulting firm for a while there doing a lot of political things. So I left politics for about 10 years to do like an airline startup and all sorts of fun stuff, but they keep pulling you back into politics. And now there's really a call for it. So Posterity Pack is a super PAC, which means we can take unlimited contributions from anyone, any entity, and we're basically going to be using that to hold people accountable. We think that there's a shift happening when November comes along. We want to see some big hearings next year where we can basically take a really strong look at this and make sure that Wilma Wooten, this sort of failed healthcare doctor who runs our show out here in San Diego, will never dictate to my business, my church, my kids at all ever again what they can and can't do. And so we're going to try to really bring some light to that, because look, as adults, we'll deal with it, right? It's our problem. We're okay. Politics nips us in the bud. This was a policy issue. We have a say in policy. But when you came after my kids, like, I have me, Barry, I've got a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 10-month-old, right? And then I've got a 14-year-old, an 18-year-old, an 18-year-old, a 23-year-old, and a 25-year-old. So I've got 8 kids. Okay, I'm not from the same wife, but I love these kids. But I saw my daughters lose 2 years of their life, and then I remember my 5-year-old and my 3-year-old were in preschool, and they almost got shut down. So we're doing this to sort of make sure that posterity is held intact and that we have a good place for that. Because I tell you, I can't bear with that again.
Yeah, I'm with you. Listen, and the fight goes on here in New Hampshire. We passed legislation that we thought was going to prevent school districts from reimposing mask mandates. The governor, Republican, vetoed the legislation in sort of a we all thought there was a done deal on a compromise, but the governor sort of rear-ended everybody. So the fight goes on pretty much across the country, I think. And to your point, to me, it is mostly about the kids. I can suffer through anything, for the most part, but it's really about what we've put kids through,
Yeah.
and to some extent, the stories of what we put our elderly through for the last couple of years. Those are stories I hope that we continue to tell, and I think COVID Stories Archive is a really cool repository where, it's all for us. It's all fresh, right? I look at the 9/11 generation,
Yeah.
and there are people now. I work with people who were not born, or maybe were little kids, don't remember September 11th. So down the line, the substance and the texture and all the things that we retain from this experience will go away. And if we don't tell the story the right way, people will never understand what the world has gone through in the last couple of years.
There's an old apocryphal story handed down through rabbinical literature about Noah's time and the people who didn't make it on the ark, which were many, right? And the tale has it that when the waters rose, Noah's ark starts lifting. The people are left on the ground, and they grab their kids and they hold their kids to their waist. When the waters rose to their waist, they held their kids to their chest. When the waters rose to their chest, they put their kids on their shoulders. But when the waters rose to their neck, there was a reason why these people got left behind. They put their kids underneath their feet so they could breathe. And that's what I feel our leaders have done, right? I can't get back those 2 years my kids went through. My preschool teacher telling me, try to teach your kid how to say the letter H through a mask, right? And I look at, the incredible downside that I see in my son. I see in my daughters who have just been impacted tremendously by the loss of social life for 2 years. And we're going to make sure this never happens again.
I love it. Hey, he's Justin Hart at Justin_Hart on Twitter. One of the best follows for COVID, Rational Ground, and a number of other things.
I love this scene. This is great. Invite me back anytime. I'm a teetotal and Mormon, but I won't do the bourbon. But I love the scene here.
That's right. You know what? That's what it's about. It's about the social circle. It's about the chance to have some real conversation. And I think, hopefully granular, real people, real stuff, doing some things that matter. That's what we hope to turn into. So thanks for
Justin.
for
I
participating.
got to tell you, I thought Barry said Bret Hart was going to be on the podcast. I was super excited. This might have been a little better, but I thank you for joining us, man. It was a pleasure.
That's okay, man. You got to talk. Well, my other passion is doing machine learning and artificial intelligence. I'm just about to kick that algorithm back in gear to help pick my fantasy football team. So we'll see how that goes.
Nice.
All right, keep us updated, man.
All right, guys. Dave, Dan, nice to meet you guys. We'll talk to you soon. Barry, thanks for the invite.
Sure.
All right, we'll tell you.
Thank you, sir. Dan, you got to do a read here, don't you?
I do. So I'm actually pretty pumped. So Johnstone Supply over in Troy. I was having some problem with my hot water heater, and I'm under the orange roof. My boy Tom says to me, man, you should have called me. And I said, it was cool. It was 11 o'clock on a Friday night, man. I wasn't going to bother you. Gives me his cell phone number, and he says, hey, you can call me anytime. And that's the people at Johnstone Supply. So summer is here. You can feel the heat here in upstate New York. If you want to stay cool all summer, call Johnstone Supply in Troy. Ask the team at Johnstone Supply about Goodman, Fujitsu, and Westinghouse's furnaces. I believe those are the John Goodman furnace, I believe is what it is. All in stock at great prices. Need someone to help you install your new system? Johnstone Supply in Troy can help with that too. Give Tom, Kev, James, or Bert a call and help them put you in a cooler place this summer. Call Johnson Supply Troy, 518-272-5922, or visit them at 2600 6th Ave in Troy. Get a new AC system installed today, 518-272-5922, or johnstonesupply.com. Wow, my face takes up the whole screen. This is not flattering. What did you do to me there, bro?
Oh, there you go. I fixed it.
Wow.
I let you go solo there. I gave you some solo time for a second.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Wow.
It was good.
So that's a heavy segment to follow here. Wow. But
we were gonna put him at the end, but our timing got messed up, and I know he's on the West Coast time, just kind of in between kid stuff and whatever. So I don't want to hold Justin up, and it's great. It was good to catch up with him. I'd love to catch up with him in San Diego, frankly, but this was almost as good.
Yeah. So let's roll into overrated, underrated. So Dave, this is where we can really get to know each other here a little bit. It's been a while since we've caught up.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk overrated, underrated. I think we're going to Barry, we go barbecue topics. Is that where we're at with this?
Yes, that's where I want to go. 4th of July, right? We just talked about how for some rational people, 4th of July is the best holiday there is. So let's talk about your 4th of July barbecue, your 4th of July beverages, foods and drinks for the holiday that are overrated or underrated.
Okay. Steak tips. What do we
Underrated.
think?
I think
Underrated?
underrated.
Underrated, absolutely.
Steak tips are
Underutilized.
that's the thing, right? They're not a go-to. People
No.
automatically go to a whole bunch of other stuff. But you go, I tell you what, I went to the Hannaford grocery store. They have a great butcher shop, and you get
Oh,
those
really?
those steak tips that are
Is there a
pre-marinated.
Hannaford live read? I missed the Hannaford. Are they sponsoring this?
I'm working. But they're a great
This is
company
a,
based
this is
in
a
Maine.
demo.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
so
All
I've
right.
just given them a little love because that's where I like to shop at the Hannaford.
Yeah, steak
And
tips, a little grilled pineapple, a little steak tip, a little teriyaki sauce. It's the way to go.
so we agree, underrated.
Yeah, super underrated. What about high noons or RTD drinks in general?
Who?
The high noons, the vodka, canned seltzers, canned cocktails. High
So
noons are amazing.
overrated.
Oh, dude, so underrated. They're delicious.
Let me tell you what. There was no pandemic before everybody started drinking this hard seltzer crap. Okay,
Dude,
back when we just drank Red Dog or a Natty Ice like normal people.
yeah, you guys died of natural causes. Dude, hit me with that watermelon high noon. I'm in all the way. Underrated.
No way. So overrated.
Dave, where you going on this
Oversold.
one?
I'm going. I don't drink anymore, so I haven't had them. But just by the marketing and seeing
How does Dave leave the chat? How do we get Dave? Dave doesn't drink anymore. What is this?
I think you could just hit the X and
You know why? Because he didn't want to drink those damn seltzers. That's why.
the seltzer. Yeah, I think they're overrated. Everyone has them. It's once. I think it's oversaturated, so it's overrated.
You know how you know they're overrated? Let me tell you something. I was at the store the other day, and when you look at the beer aisle, 2/3 of it is all this seltzer crap, and
Yeah.
then
Because it
like
sells,
only a
baby.
third.
It
Ugh,
sells.
it's going to be like Zima. 10 years from now, they're going to be bringing back
Zima.
throwback seltzers because it's going to be nostalgic. They suck.
Barry, what's your overrated, underrated? Where you going?
All right. This is, I think, an obvious one. Hot dogs.
Underrated.
I think they're underrated too. Yeah.
You think they're underrated?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think everyone passes the hot dogs. If you have a buffet, a grill buffet, you have burgers, hot dogs, I'll throw in steak tips. The last thing out of that group that's getting picked is a hot dog. Everyone's going for the burger or anything else. I think they're underrated. I think they're, yeah.
But doesn't their inclusion in every barbecue, despite the fact that they're going to hit 9th in the lineup, mean that they're overrated?
Disagree. The versatility of the glizzy. Throw some chili on it, throw some cheese on it. You can put some ketchup on that bad boy, a little mustard, some relish and onion. You want to throw kraut on it. I mean, you could. The hot dog is a canvas, and you can paint it in whatever way you'd like.
The hot
And
dog.
you don't need utensils either.
That's true too.
For the
hot dog is a snack.
And some people don't need to chew; they can just throw it right down.
Well, so my man Joey Chestnut, by the way, who is one of the greatest athletes of our time, that guy doesn't need to chew. He just, I mean, right down the throat.
Right down.
Yeah.
Right down the throat.
Love to meet him in a dark alley.
You might not. Did you see the headlock he put on that protester? I think he could
head what?
I think he could take you.
Well, this feels rough after that great interview with Justin Hart. Big shout out to Justin for joining us today. But overrated, underrated. Underrated is this segment after that segment because that was tough. That was good. Barry, you want to talk about SeatGeek?
Yeah, absolutely, man. This is one of my absolute passions now that the good weather has finally hit. It's summertime. We're talking about all the great opportunities you have to enjoy the weather now that we're past the 4th of July, the greatest holiday. So this summer, you're looking to buy tickets for your favorite band, sports team, venue, or more, remember to buy your tickets at SeatGeek, SeatGeek. Visit SeatGeek.com to search for the event you want to buy tickets for this summer. If your total ticket buy is over $50, use the promo code GAZ. That's GOZ, GAZ, to get $20 off your purchase. Any ticket purchase over $50 from SeatGeek.com, use the promo code GAZ. You get $20 off your order. Save some money and enjoy the summer by using SeatGeek.com and promo code GAZ. I mean, that's a hell of a deal, right? $50. You spend $50, you get 20 off. That's a pretty good deal.
That's
through
awesome.
SeatGeek.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
So we got to go see some shows.
Yeah, I'll be at Morgan Wallen on Thursday up here in Albany. See some Morgan Wallen and Hardy. Pretty excited about that. We got Buffett in a few weeks. Hopefully, I can make it to the show this time.
Legendary. If you don't make it for the second time, that would be legendary.
We should go live at the Buffett concert at the tailgate. That should be a Bros and Bourbon moment.
That'd be fun. Dave, you gonna come?
Yeah.
Where are they playing? Where's this?
At the Great Woods in Mansfield.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'll go.
By the way, I don't know if you saw, Dan, a little breaking news at SPAC. Dead and Company canceled their show day of. I guess something happened with John Mayer's family or something. So SPAC loses their Dead and Company date at the last minute.
Yeah, Dead and Company's a big. They do big shows up here, man. Like
huge.
A couple of years ago was wild. So that's a rough hit for upstate New York today.
But you know what? So if you had your Dead and Company tickets to go to SPAC, you're going to get your money back. You get a refund at point of purchase. You know what you do with that money? Take it to the SeatGeek and hit promo code GAZ, and you can spend it. You get more for your money by taking it out of that point of sale going to SeatGeek. So it's a win-win.
Boom. So we're wrapping up our first episode of Bros and Bourbon. Thanks to Dave Jacobs for joining us, having some fun. Justin Hart for popping in for a little while, having a deep conversation. Thanks to our sponsors, Mohawk Honda, Johnstone Supply, and SeatGeek. Barry will probably drop another one of these same day next week. Work for you?
That's a goal. That's a goal. I think we want to just try to get this, get the content into the still and let it start aging, start filling up the barrels on the Bros and Bourbon podcast, and so we'll try to keep the conversation going.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, and talk to you guys soon. Cheers.
Yeah.